In a fresh move, thousands of soldiers have taken to the heights of Pangong Lake. This lake is the size of Singapore. This present strategic movement comes just months after India and China got embroiled in their first deadly conflict after nearly 4 decades. Indians allege that the Chinese troops squatted in the Indian territory and provoked a standoff near the Ladakh region. Later, the two countries agreed to de-escalate on a mutual agreement, thereby commanding the troops to back off from the Galwan Valley. A month later, just when the border tension was drawing to a close at different points of the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, Colonel Santosh Babu along with 20 soldiers saw the 2/10 of the Chinese army in the region. This implied that the Chinese had transgressed the LAC. Upon encounter, Chinese troops refused to withdraw their tents. This led to a fight, although both sides were armed with assault rifles but didn't fire, as Article 6 of the Sino-Indian Agreement restricts firing within 2 kilometers of the LAC. But that didn't stop the Chinese troops from using crude weapons like rocks, iron rods, long wooden spurs tied with sharp metal nails, which eventually led to the death of 20 Indian soldiers, including a commanding officer. The Indian side also said that many Chinese soldiers died, but the Chinese side did not confirm the casualties. The Indian and Chinese have now had over 70 years of bad blood. After India's independence and formation of the People's Republic of China in the year 1949, India was open to maintaining good relations with China. But things took an ugly turn when India gave shelter to the Buddhists who were crushed by the Chinese as the world looked on. And India, being the natural home of Buddhists, could not be a spectator. Soon China perceived India as a threat to its rule over Tibet, thereby severing ties between the two nations and marking another prominent reason for advent to the Indo-China War. The perilous war between India and China broke out due to border disputes. In 1954, China and India concluded the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence under which India acknowledged China's rule over Tibet. Then again in July, when the government decided to redraw the Indian map with clear boundaries, the Chinese map showed 120,000 square kilometers of the Indian territory as their land, and this brought the border issues back on the table. And if that was not enough, the Chinese attacked India in 1962 and caused heavy casualties on the Indian side. The war went on for a month and came to rest on November 21st after China declared a ceasefire. With this bloody history behind, there is still no resolution in sight. The rest of the world is more than happy to see world's 2 largest countries sparring over a few thousand kilometers of empty land. Both these countries are also home to a very poor population with poor human rights. India and China will have to find a solution to their perception of line of actual control. And if they both don't, they will continue to be a laughing stock for the world and a great market to sell weapons. New Delhi Bureau, Democracy News Live.
A border dispute at heights that are unfit for human living. For many months now, the wrangling for space has gone on. The latest move by Indian troops has upset the Chinese apple cart. But it was just months ago that China had already occupied Finger 4 to 8 on which India has claims. The Chinese continue to occupy many of these areas in Galwan Valley, which until now were in Indian control. It is a massive intrusion, and in India, it has had tremendous impact on India's ruling party, the BJP. China is fighting a war on all fronts. The West is pushing its companies out of China. The Americans are putting pressure in the South China Seas. And slowly, pressure is going to come to nations that have been helping Chinese in the Indian Ocean region as well. This will isolate the Chinese further. The only support that China may have will partially come from Europe and partially from Russia. But the Chinese have little trust in the Russians because of competition in the same markets that they're out there. The primary supporter that China has sits on the other side of the heights of the Himalayas, Pakistan. The Chinese need them, and Pakistan needs China as well to continue pushing India. Turmoil in India creates a better political situation in Pakistan. The casualty of all of this is peace. This is what good nations strive for, but it seems nowhere in sight. Today, we're going to be talking to two military officers of the Indian Army. They're both retired senior officers, and I'm speaking with a journalist who's based out of Pakistan. I'm calling him journalist based out of Pakistan because journalists don't have nationalities; they just are unbiased, and that's what Ahmer is. Joining us on the show today is Major General Pankaj Sachdeva. He was commissioned in the infantry in 1979. Subsequently, he was in the Mechanized Infantry Regiment. Also joining us is Brigadier Rakesh Chhibber. Again, he's a course mate. He's from the Grenadiers Regiment. And Ahmer Shaheen. Let me start with you, General Sachdeva. Tell me, where does this whole war stand? You know the landscape, you know how it is. What is the situation really on the ground? So, General Sachdeva, I think his frame is frozen. I don't see him. Can I ask you the same question, Brigadier Chhibber? Where is the present conflict? You've seen the territory. Where does it all stand today?
This area is a rugged mountainous terrain, and as of now, this is already September. Another couple of months, and this whole area is going to be snowbound, and it is going to be uh, uh, almost cut off for a long period. Now, whatever has to happen, it is within this window of next 1.5 to 2 months. That I think. Now, what can happen? Various things which we can look at. The first thing is that China would like to, after the recent you know action by India in the area of Blacktop and Spangor Lake, China has to do something to save its face, because it has got an egg on its face now, because it never imagined that someone could stand up to it and reply back. So China has to do something before the the situation in that area gets frozen for the winter. I expect them to do some local action in that area. May not be exactly in the same place, maybe in Depsang area, maybe down in the opposite Uttarakhand, that area, or maybe Sikkim and Arunachal also. So wherever they want, they will first. The point is that they will choose their own area where they feel that they will be able to not only uh, you know cause kind of a embarrassment to us, but it will also result in a kind of a show of victory for them. So I do expect in the next month and a half or so, month and a half, I do expect China to do something uh, to be able to show to its own countrymen that yes, they have they have shown India its place, and they have replied back to India. That is what I think.
One of the reasons the Chinese obviously had acted, and many have talked about it, was also to play in line with the Pakistanis, with the Pakistani government. Certainly, it plays out well with the Pakistani counterparts when India comes under pressure. And when obviously India came under attack in the Galwan Valley and India lost its troops, I was seeing some of the largest noises coming from Pakistan about them being happy, saying, all right, how are you going to defend? India is incapable of defending from China. Now, explain to me, sir, if I don't know if General Sachdeva is online, how does this play out into the last battle in Galwan, where they they caused a great deal of impact on the Indian troops, and there was no confirmation in terms of numbers on the Chinese side how many had died. We heard all about it, but really there wasn't any visual confirmation, or there wasn't any Chinese confirmation on their casualty. How does this present action by the Indians kind of look?
Well, as far as the casualties on the Chinese side are concerned, we will probably never know how many they suffered. And the fact is that our troops did give them a nice bashing. There is no doubt in that. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan will all they are on the other side of the fence. We all know that, and they will definitely be supporting the other side, whether it is during the operations as a sort of you can call it a support uh, during operations or otherwise. As far as India is concerned, let me be very frank with you. It is well known that we have given them a bloody nose, and China also realizes that. However, if we expect that China will pull out and go back, pack their bags and go back, that's not going to happen very soon. It is going to be a continuous affair, and I do feel that such skirmishes over here and these actions will continue till the time the campaigning season is over. That is sometime in November, December. That is the time frame when we can look at some resolution coming to it. Uh, I'm not very sure. It would be a speculation by anyone whether this can, manifest itself into a larger battle or war or this thing. But like Brigadier Chhibber was telling, that there are areas they would definitely want a face saver after all what has happened and the actions which we have taken on the 29th, 30th night. Now,
Right.
after those actions, China would definitely be looking at a strategic pullout, but with a face saving situation. They would never want to go into their barracks or to status quo ante without being declared or without their population feeling that they have given taught India a lesson. That is definitely there. So we will have to wait for some time, I think, but to expect that these skirmishes will end, that will not happen. Uh, to expect that these skirmishes will manifest into a larger battle, very, very much possible. One trigger happy person can, you know, uh, whatever situation is there, it can go out of hand with that.
Sure.
So that is what
Sure.
I feel.
One of the things that was being talked about even a few months ago is that President Xi is there for his lifetime. He's not going to go away. But this whole backlash with India, this back and forth with India, and the way the Chinese companies are being treated globally, and the American pressure has certainly put President Xi under pressure. And if President Xi does not show grit when it's dealing with India, which the Chinese expected were an easy force to overrun, then it's going to put a lot of pressure on him. So I think President Xi is going to do everything possible that he can to make sure that he has some face saving done. Emmer, tell me does this story of the Indian-Chinese conflict play out in Pakistan? I can't hear
Audio,
you, Emmer.
audio.
Emmer, I don't get your audio. Emmer, I can't hear you. All right, Emmer, would you reconnect again and maybe try again? Let me go back to Brigadier Chhibber. Brigadier Chhibber, explain to me that now that India has come to this point, all of a sudden there is an action in Arunachal Pradesh. Many have been talking about a likely action in Arunachal Pradesh by the Chinese. How ready is India to tackle the situation in Arunachal Pradesh?
Okay, so as far as Arunachal Pradesh is concerned, there are two distinct areas in Arunachal Pradesh, as we say. One is the area of the Tawang Valley and beyond. The area between, say, Tulungla and Hathungla. That is the area which is, one area. As far as that area is concerned, let me assure you that area is very well held by us, and there is no way that China is going to do anything over there, because the concentration of troops at our end is there to meet the eventuality, whatever they can come up with. The other area, which also in our military parlance we call it as the rest of Arunachal Pradesh, that is RALP, it basically consists of four valleys. Going from west to east, you have the Subansiri Valley, the Siom Valley, Siang Valley, then Dibang Valley. Okay, and of course, on the eastern edge is the Lohit Valley. Okay, now in all these valleys, there exist the uh, disputed areas and areas which are part of it in under the occupation of the Chinese. For instance, in the area there is an area called Asafila Longju area. Now, Asafila is one area where this is Asafila is in this Subansiri Valley. So this is the uh, now this area is already kind of a no man's land. There exists a kind of a no man's land over there where the Chinese come in during the patrolling season, which is basically the summer seasons. They come all the way right up to a point called Yume Bridge. They come up to there, they show their presence, and they go back. And we also go right up till to our perception of the LAC, which is there, which is right up till the what we call as the LAC or the international border. We also go over there
Can you hear me now?
till now. So, so there now the perception there is very clear. We also go there, they also come here. So that is the disputed area. The other
Right.
area is Longju area, where China is in occupation of a land, a thin strip of land from Longju right up till something, a place called, which is just short of Maja. So that area is already in the Chinese occupation. And so they are already there. Anything beyond that, they will be stretching a bit too far. And
Right.
I don't expect them to be able to come
So,
anywhere there.
so
Then there are
sure.
the other places. Yeah,
So let me bring in Ahmer in since his audio is back up. Let me ask him
yeah.
in terms of how the story is playing out in Pakistan. I know it is a big issue. A lot of the Pakistani political side gets very excited when they see an India-China conflict unfolding. Ahmer, give me a sense on what happens on the ground in Pakistan. What is the reaction of the Pakistani government and a lot of how does Pakistan respond to the India-China conflict unfolding?
Can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can.
Can you repeat the question? I was trying to sort out the audio.
So Emmer, explain to me how does the conflict play out in terms of when India and China conflict is unfolding. Uh, what what is the reaction in Pakistan?
As anybody would expect, Pakistanis are rather the media. When I say Pakistan, Pakistan is such a big country, you can't really speak for one Pakistan. But broadly speaking, Pakistanis, the media, Pakistanis power centers, everyone's a little happy or relieved with the fact that India is engaged with another adversary, and this time the adversary is much bigger than Pakistan itself, because Pakistanis, our textbooks, our history, our media, and our influencers have always talked about India as the enemy. So, general perspective is that it's a great thing that India is engaged, and India is now troubled by China rather than Pakistan having to use its resources to cause problems with India, which inevitably continuously have been happening between the two countries. But I see the situation a little more than just what's visible on the cover. Yes, Pakistanis. Pakistani power circles consider India as an enemy, but also this is a region. If this region is destabilized, then it doesn't do any good to any of the countries in the region, including China and Pakistan. And if India is destabilized, of course it will impact Pakistan. The other is the narrative of the war machine. Now, the security and war industries, of course, they would flourish at times of these skirmishes, and if a war happens, of course, then that would be their boom. But the problem is that India, Pakistan, and even China do not have, cannot right now be involved in even small skirmishes. And if India is having to tackle China, of course, India will be boosting up and beefing up its defense and offense, which means that Pakistan would be following suit because Pakistan is directly looking at India's ability in terms of aircraft carriers, in terms of helicopters and aeroplanes and tanks. So Pakistan will be competing with India even when if it's beefing up against China. So this is bad news for any country in the region. And I think the way wars and skirmishes have been conducted in this region is full of chest beating. That we killed so many Indians, or Indians would say we killed so many Pakistanis, and the same goes for China. China wouldn't even release its numbers saying nobody got killed. So this is militaristic chest beating. It takes us away from logical and rational based diplomatic solutions to the problem, which is the only solution really. India cannot conquer China or Pakistan, and neither can either of the two countries conquer India. So inevitably, it's always going to be a stalemate. It's just going to be at the end of the day going to determine how much loss does any one of the countries suffer, and it's only about loss without diplomatic interference and without this chest beating kind of diplomatic interference. Only then
Ahmer,
we
very
can talk about real solutions.
Ahmer, Emma, you raise a very good point. A lot of the chest thumping goes on, and I don't think conflict is in the interest of anybody. Uh, this LAC conflict obviously has been thrust on India based on the last few months. General Sachdeva, explain to me, was this whole beginning of this conflict in the Galwan Valley, was India at all responsible for restarting this conflict in any way, or was it a Chinese creation?
Uh, well, let me tell you very frankly, India has never, ever attempted to change the status quo ante. It is a known fact that we are more we wanted to be more towards our economic development, and with the COVID pandemic going on, there was no way that India would have gone in for it. In fact, I would go a step ahead and say that we got surprised. We were a bit surprised as to how this thing has manifested into a situation where uh, the Chinese are not ready to go back. They came in the garb of an exercise and they never went back. Permanent structures started coming up. It came as a surprise. So a situation has been thrust upon us, and that situation was probably with the aim that, as always, India would buckle and they would get cowed down. This time, it didn't happen so, and it has resulted in a stalemate where it led to a bloody battle. I would call it a battle where many people have been killed, many soldiers have been killed, people have lost lives, families have been destroyed. But uh, when such a thing happens, the lack of trust, all those previous treaties which you have gone through and which you have said there will be no fights, we shall not fire a shot. Without firing a shot, if 20 of our people have got killed and a number of theirs, the figures we do not know of, right? If something of this nature has happened, there will always be a trust deficit. And this condition is likely to continue. Is likely to continue. And to say that India is responsible, well, global times can continue to say whatever they feel like. I do not think that India has ever or would want a situation to develop in a manner that it affects our economic development, and particularly so at the time when the pandemic is taking its toll.
So whether it's global times or many of the jingoistic networks that are, paid little services, they cannot be called news services. These are just propaganda services. And, there is no dearth of them either on the Chinese side or on the Indian side. I think there are many of them. We all know it. They're all paid. They are funded. So I think there people have little trust on Global Times. It's not shouldn't be called as a journalistic service at all. So literally nobody has faith on it. But my question to you, sir, is you said that they expected India to cow down like it has in the past. Are you saying that the Indian military side cowed down in the past to the Chinese when they came and attacked before?
No, no, it was, it was not getting cowed down, but it's also a, you see, it's a political decision also as to what action you take, right? The military has got to be given a clear-cut direction as to what action they need to take. If you tell them that you are going to sit tight and do nothing, okay, and we will proceed only on the diplomatic front, well, so be it. But this time, when the military action was decided upon and it did take place, uh, the message has gone loud and clear that we will not take things lying down anymore.
Correct. So I mean, what you're also I want to extrapolate that idea is earlier the stance should have been we'll handle this diplomatically, but this government obviously said no, go not diplomatically, go on and do what you need to do on the ground, so the morale of the troops stays high and India is able to take the action it needs to take on the ground, is what you're saying, right, sir?
Absolutely. Whenever such things happen, you cannot tie the hands of the military behind their backs and tell them to take action. Well, you got to give a certain degree of freedom to the people on ground, the commanders on ground, to take suitable action, take a decision based on the situation that presents itself. It cannot be taken, the decision cannot be taken by a political person and said, uh, okay, fine, let us sit down and we'll wait for things to happen. We'll, they will automatically go back, because that was what was happening. That was what was happening. They used to come, like Brigadier Chhibber was trying to bring out in Longju area and other places. These people used to come in and go back. I've been witness to it. I've visited a number of those passes myself. I've walked those areas and I know it. We used to go and leave our telltale signs. They used to remove our telltale signs and they used to keep their telltale signs. And the process used to be reversed each time our patrols used to visit. But this time, when things went out of hand and a reaction was necessitated, I think it is also a political will, and to some extent the national fervor, you can call it, or whatever you may be, it may be, that we must take action. We are no pushovers. It's not 1962 anymore.
I'm with you, sir.
Uh,
So
may,
Amber, let you weigh in, Amber, there. um, Do you think any of the Chinese action was possibly determined by what Pakistan asked China to do? Do you think Pakistan would have pushed China to take action to bring India under pressure? Because there was a lot going on the Indian Pakistani front.
I personally don't think that China does anything other than for itself. Of course, geostrategically, Pakistan is an ally because China needs Pakistan at least as much as Pakistan needs China, because China wouldn't want to have enemies all around, of course. And also, China finds it easier to deal with Pakistan because Pakistan's been directly and indirectly been governed by military establishment, and it's very easy to get the military establishment to do things that are rather difficult for Pakistani politicians to achieve. For example, the CPEC that has been happening since a while, it is only military rulers and pro-military governments like the current government in Pakistan that can do anything that they want to do. I mean, this current government opened up Kartarpur. Imagine Nawaz Sharif doing it. He would have been held a traitor. So we need to be careful for what we wish for, because if anybody thinks that uh, decisions pertaining to war should be made by anybody else than the chosen elected members of parliament, the politicians, then it is a slippery slope, and you don't want to go down that slope, because you should learn from us. We went down that road where the generals decided that they were going to take out Kargil, and then Kargil happened. Nawaz Sharif officially came out and said he was not even aware of the Kargil.
Absolutely. What Ahmer is frozen there, but what Ahmer is talking about is on the heights of Kargil, on the border of India and Pakistan, on the line of control, uh, Pakistani troops took up positions, tucked away themselves as militants, and then a whole action happened where the Indian forces had to push out Pakistan from its areas. General Shibber, I'm going to wind down the discussion here to understand what are the next steps that we're going to see forward. Will this turn out to be a complete war, which many are talking about? Is that China is not going to be able to take the pressure and it may actually explode and say, we need to go in for a complete operation. And while India deals with COVID and China obviously readies itself to push the Indian soldiers out from the places where Indian soldiers are occupied right now, this may really be a mess. Do you think that will happen?
Uh, I do not. I maybe I'm, you know, kind of making a prediction of sorts. But the fact of the matter is, I do not see an all-out war between India and China. I do not see it. It is not in the interest of both the countries to conduct a large-scale war against each other. However, China cannot and will not go back from this point with egg on its face, and it needs a face saver, and it therefore is going to engineer a skirmish in some or the other area before it decides to say, okay, it's fine for the day now. Next, we will see next in the next campaigning season. So that is the first point I want to bring out. The second aspect that I want to bring out over here is it is not so easy now after what India has done for China to now decide that it can take action anywhere unilaterally. If it takes action anywhere unilaterally, it should be prepared to see a counter being, put into
A
action by
counter operation
India
by India, yeah.
in some
Sure,
other area. It is
sure.
not
Absolutely.
necessarily. I mean, the present action on the 29th, 30th of August. You know, it is that while everyone was concentrating on the north of Pangang Tso,
Right.
India decided to go in south of Pangang Tso into the Spangur Gap, and so we've been able to surprise the Chinaman to that extent.
I
Otherwise,
think
China was very comfortable in the fact that it could do a little bit of skirmish here and there, eat their age-old, tactics of salami slicing. They were able, and they were thinking that they could do this continuously until, uh, you know, uh, and, and nobody has the guts to face up to them. The last major, the face-off China had was in 1979 where it got a bloody nose from the Vietnamese. After that, China has only been trying to, put pressure on the other side and making them, toe their line. So, therefore, we need to understand that the Chinese have now, for the first time after nearly about 4 decades, they have realized, look, things are not going to be as before. They have to be now prepared to fight it out in case they continue with their past tactics of salami slicing into the other people's territory. It has got too many, border issues with almost every neighboring countries of theirs, okay? Including the South China Sea, including the East China Sea. All these places they have some issue or the other, whether it is with Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. Everywhere they have issues with everyone, and they have been you know,
Absolutely.
trying to,
I'm with you.
they have
I'm
been
with
trying
you.
to browbeat them, the others, to toe their line. But now
I'm with you.
that thing has changed, and that they cannot accept it, and India will not let them do the same thing again.
I think
That is
it's a
what I
change
feel.
situation on the Indian end as well. India was
Yes.
playing diplomatic, but that diplomatic game seems to be over. India is
Are
not
actually
taking.
the Peace and Tranquility Treaty of 1993, which was signed between India and uh, China, when Sharad Pawar was the defense minister.
Defense minister.
Now,
Yeah.
I think that was the most stupid, you know, agreement which was signed, in hindsight, if I may say so, because
No, and
it
I think
it
in
it
retrospect we can.
did not allow the us to be able to take any action when, you know, the Chinamen took some action. They were proactive, we were reactive throughout, and which is something
I
that
think
has changed.
there have been many issues beyond that as well. That's one of the issues. I think there was a sense on the Indian side that this can be won with peace, and I think that was a false sense. But what is still required, and we must remember, is I don't think military action is going to solve anything here. Having defense forces for making sure that it's a deterrent is a great idea, but being all out in battle is in nobody's interest. Like Ahmer, brought that out earlier as well. Sachdeva, your closing thoughts, and then I'll go to a little closing thought with Ahmer, and then I'll close the show.
Okay, as far as the situation goes now, I would tend to agree with Brigadier Chhibber that it is neither in India's interest nor in China's interest to go in for an all-out war, and definitely so more for China. I would say this because China cannot, under no circumstances, can it win an all-out war. It cannot subjugate India or Indian armed forces. They know it very well. It's in the area they people start comparing the force levels which China has vis-a-vis India, right? But we do not realize that all the force level cannot be applied in Pangangso or in Eastern Ladakh or in Ladakh area. It has to have the deployment. The deployment is based on certain principles. It is based on certain perceptions of the area, and you cannot leave the other areas absolutely high and dry. So, comparison of forces that China is 6 times India or 20 times India or 100 times India is not an issue, right? We are very well entrenched over there. We have the force level to counter China. So China cannot think of a walkover kind of a situation. The only problem is what will they do? These localized skirmishes are likely to happen, or maybe a regional area may get activated to some extent. But local skirmishes cannot build up into a war like situation. I don't think we have reached that stage as yet. The fact that the armies are talking to each other, the fact that there are diplomatic efforts being made, whether you may say that India has neither agreed to China, what China was saying, Mr. Rajnath Singh and his counterpart on the side, they did not agree to each other. Whether Mr. S. Jaishankar will be able to push something further, I think these things should continue. If these things do not continue, then there is a problem. The very fact that these things continuing is that both sides want to disengage. They have a space for working, and I think to think of an all-out war between the two countries, it's not a possibility as of now. That would be my take.
Amber, closing thoughts from you in terms of how do you see this unfolding from the Pakistani end, and where do you think this is going? I saw a statement both from China today as well as from Pakistan. The Chinese statement was about uh, that how China would be able to defeat India if it came down to a war. The Pakistani statement talked about the new hypersonic missile test that India had carried out and said do not be too happy about the test, and this is a threat to us. Explain to me, how do you see this unfolding on the Pakistani end now?
It might look different from the Indian perspective from within India, but my personal perspective from Pakistan is that yes, we see India talk about diplomatic and peaceful solutions when it comes to China and also when it comes to Pakistan. But personally, I feel that there is more talk than action, especially in terms of China. I know that the relationship between India and China is not the same as Pakistan and China, but Pakistan was very quick and Pakistan rushed to settle any discord on the border, any dispute when it came to territories. Pakistan literally rushed, and a lot of people saw it as a weakness. And I think it's one of some of the things that I actually agree with. It doesn't matter if somebody thinks Switzerland is a weak country. It wouldn't matter if a lot of people try to make fun of India, that look, India is trying to go for peace, India is going to the UN Security Council, trying to urge China to peacefully territorial disputes. And I think the whole narrative about we can't be seen to be weak. I think a lot of countries, it's a new world order. A lot of countries that do not spend every penny that they have on arms race are still pretty powerful countries, because economies determine how powerful you are, not your missiles and everything. And the way I see those statements, China saying we can defeat India in an all-out war, or Pakistan talking about missiles, it puts fear in my heart. Not just the fear of war; it puts fear of Pakistan trying to up India in the missile race, for example. So I feel India has been saying the right thing, but I feel India needs to try to use a different approach, practically speaking, in order to force China into a peace accord, even if that means China might look like a bigger power, a bigger militaristic power than India. But India's focus in terms of talk has been peace. But in terms of action and lobbying, India has been doing good lobbying against Pakistan, but when it comes to lobbying against Chinese perceived aggression or territorial disputes, I think India needs to do a lot more than what it is talking about.
So the reality on the ground is this, that for about 15 years now, the United States has been pushing India to make sure it gets into a situation where it's in direct conflict with China. There, it has done everything possible it could to isolate India from China, because India going along with China or China coming along with India would have caused havoc in the world economy. And that's not something the United States certainly wants. Chinese had gotten too powerful for the United States. You also have to remember the Chinese were built by the United States. It wasn't, they wouldn't have been able to become the economy they became without the United States. Similarly, when we look at Pakistan, Pakistan's power center was the United States. So I think the region has to understand, the Indians, the Chinese, and the Pakistanis, especially, all three of them fairly substantial military powers, if you want to call them that, is that there has to be peace, there has to be coexistence. But for that, all these three countries need to mark the LAC, the LOC, GPS points. I remember in 2004 when General Musharraf sent one of his very senior officers to discuss the Siachen situation, and he came to me with a map, and we sat down with where the points were, where the soldiers were going to be on both sides of Siachen. He said, "We don't want to mark the points." And I said, if you're not going to mark the points, why would the Indian side agree to it? So you have to be practical around it. Marking your GPS location, saying, these are our boundaries, these are just empty lands, we can't do very much with it. And that would be the way out when for all of these countries. But if they continue on the stupidity, as I call it, I think they'll land up with a lot of egg on their faces, all three of them. So the need is of peace. The need is to mark your boundaries and live happily thereafter, rather than go out chasing small territories and small areas. Thank you very much, General Brigadier Chhibber, for joining me. Thank you, General Sachdeva. Thank you, Ahmer. I think it was a very fruitful discussion, and I think we must continue on this path of finding peace. Good night and good luck.